1975, a young fellow named Bob Dylan introduced me to a friend of his named Robbie Robertson. And both of us being very protective and kind of standoffish, we looked at each other and sized each other up, spoke for a while, and over the period of the next year, we had the chance to bump into each other and to meet in certain situations, and we realized that we were becoming friends. And Robbie and I lived not too far from each other, and we began to meet on a regular basis to talk about our ideas and projects, and then we began to talk about things we might be able to do together. Well, Robbie is the leader and composer for a group called The Band, which has been Bob Dylan's band for a long time, and Robbie's established himself as not only an extraordinary songwriter and musician, but is a rather special person as well. And we began by tossing around ideas regarding what we would do. What can we do? An album of songs? No, it's not interesting enough. It's not exciting for either of us enough. Let's talk about a subject that we like. Robbie was always fascinated by the music scene in New York City in the early 60s. And I kind of left that behind. I'd been part of it for about 8 years, knocking around, trying to place material, trying to get people to listen to music, meeting songwriters, learning, paying your dues in that respect. And I kind of wanted to leave it behind me. But Robbie was intrigued by it, and he kept bringing the subject up, and we began to explore it. And then we realized that there were some really interesting and fascinating things that have not been really talked about in regard to songwriters, in regard to that music at that time in the early 60s was going through a transitional stage. It was coming out of the pop era of Rosemary Clooney and Patti Page and Eddie Fisher, and then into the late 50s with the early, very early rock acts that began the evolution of rock, the Bobby Rydells and the Chubby Checkers and so on and so forth. And that became kind of popular for a while. And then a young guy named Bob Dylan appeared on the scene in the early 60s, and things started to change. So Bob really started it off. And then a few years later, the Beatles came out, and they proved another point, which was that the artist could, have the free reign of his creative instincts and still satisfy the business instincts of the recording companies. And those two changes resulted in a whole revolution.